This video contains spoilers for Arcane Season 1 and 2. The more I try to learn stuff about Piltover, the less I like this city, and the more I appreciate how well the authors characterize it as extremely controversial. One obvious controversy is that Piltover has a lot of abundance, while letting the Undercity starve, or even directly starving it. But even if we only look at Piltover, I think that Piltovian citizens don't enjoy that many rights. In this video, I will gather evidence to get a grasp of how Piltover's political system works, so that I, but you too, can have a general picture to judge if we would like to live in such a political system. The main official political institution that we see in Piltover is certainly the Council. We see the Councillor discuss together and vote regarding several issues in the city, and usually then we see Enforcer making their decisions happen in practice. Let's begin by understanding exactly what kind of powers the Council has. Usually, political powers can be divided into three categories: legislative, executive, and juridical. I don't really have sources for this, because I learned this in middle school, and I assume it's common knowledge. The legislative power is the power to establish laws, or modify laws, and decide what rules are valid within a territory, what is illegal and what is not. Executive power is the power to make things happen, to command how the rules are made respected, what measures can be taken so that the population behaves according to the laws, but also in general what actions can be taken by the government according to the laws already established. Juridical power is the power to judge the cases in which there is a suspicion of law breaking and condemn people who did illegal things. It has been argued that a fourth political power is information, because selecting which knowledge is provided to the population and which isn't, and also how this knowledge might be intentionally distorted in the communication, influences how the population makes decisions, and therefore its behavior. Power is all about influencing other people's lives. Let's see which types of power the Piltovian Council has. The Council surely has executive power. Along the first season and at the beginning of the second one, we see the Council deciding things to do, such as blocking the bridge connecting Piltover and Zaun, or deciding if they should invade Zaun or not, and using X-Tech or not. So they decide supposedly legal things to do to deal with some issues. They decide which action to take, so they have executive powers. What about juridical power? We see a trial, when Jace is accused of conducting dangerous scientific experiments. Who is the entity who judges if he is at fault or not, if he made something illicit or not? The Piltovian Council. So yes, they have the juridical power too. Legislative power is a bit trickier. As far as I could observe, the Council never refers to a code of law, a constitution, or any list of active laws that they and the population must follow. But we can find several clues, for example in Jace's trial. His dangerous experiments are called crimes, but no law that defines them as such is mentioned. Jace admits breaking the Academy's regulations, but these regulations are just rules, only internal to a limited institution and its members. It's not a law for the whole population. Heimerdinger says that Jace broke the ethos, which is usually the name of a widely recognized and shared moral, but not codified with precision. Shula says that if they condone Jace's actions, they are preparing the path to worse actions, as if their decision could influence the perception of what is legit and what is illegit, which is usually established by laws, but in this case their decision would modify this perception or definition. Also, when the introduction of Jace into the Council is proposed and discussed, Shula calls the addition of an 8th seat at the Council as irregular, but she contrasts it not with a law, but with a custom of several generations. Customs are unofficial laws. So it seems that the Piltovian Council doesn't follow laws or rules, but rather they trust the personal ethics, the personal laws of each councillor, in debate with the ethics of others to take decisions in every case. So even if the situation of Piltovian laws is a bit confused, I think that the legislative power of the Council can be deduced by one precise decision they take. giving the independence to Zaun. Or rather, their legislative power was already demonstrated by the fact that they can debate and decide anything about this topic, whatever the final response of the council is. Making one part of the city independent means modifying the law. The law, be it codified or not, previously established the power of the Piltovian Council to rule over Zone 2. Making Zone independent means making it immune to the power of Piltovian Council. It means modifying a rule. Before, the Piltovian Council could rule over Zone. Afterward, the new law is that the Council can't rule over Zone. If this is a modification that the Council can consider to adopt, it means they can change the laws, therefore they have legislative power too. About the fourth power of information, I am not able to say much. We see some cases in which the Piltovian Council communicates things to the population, sometimes with some propaganda, but we don't know if it is systematic, and also we don't know if the Piltovian population has other sources of information. So, in my opinion, it's not a topic worth discussing. But at least we can say that the Council has at least three powers: legislative, executive, and juridical. The situation is unusual in democracies. Again, this is something I learned in middle school. Giving all these three powers to the same institution, or even worse, to the same person, means that this entity can do whatever they want and nobody can stop them. They can decide what is legal and what is not, they can decide to do anything, and they can judge who is disobeying their laws and what the right punishment is for them. It is very common in democracies or in similar systems to have different institutions or groups of people that each administrates no more than one power, sometimes even sharing this one power with another body. This does not happen in Piltover. One group of people has all the three main powers. So the Council of Piltover has a lot of power. But how can somebody enter into this group of people that has a lot of power? How did the councillors become councillors? This question actually contains two different questions. One, who has the right to become a councillor? And two, how are new councillors added to the council? We will answer both these questions simultaneously because scenes that inform about one question often contain clues for the other question too. I think that the biggest evidence is provided by confronting the members of the council at the beginning of season 1 and at the end of season 2. As we know, during the series a lot of former members of the council have died, so they are necessarily replaced by other members. Let's see if we can find a logic in these replacements. In the first season, the councillors were Professor Heimendinger, Mel Medarda, Cassandra Kiraman, Shula, Salo, Irius Bolbok, and Torman Hoskel. At the end of the second season, the council is composed by Shula, Sevika, and 4 other people that we don't know the name of. However, we can spot some links with previous councillors by observing their appearance. I will completely ignore the 7th seat of the new council because we barely see it. I'm not able to say anything about it. So let's see who replaced who. Shula is the only member who is still there, so no replacement for her. She kept the right to be in the council. There is a councillor that is very similar to Bolbok, so probably they come from the same family or species or group of allies. There is a councillor that has similar clothes and facial features to Salo, so maybe it's a person from his family. There is a councillor who has clothing style and features similar to Torman, so maybe they come from their family. And there is Sevika, who comes from Zaun and has no family links with any of the previous councillors, but later we will find another explanation for her presence. And there is an old lady who does not resemble any previous councillor, except for the show of wealth in her style, but without precise similarity to other councillors. We will talk about her again later. So, for 3 councillors, it seems that their right to sit at the council derives from their membership to a family. The seat of 3 former councillors was passed down to 3 members of the same families. So the family of origin is probably what gives them the right to sit there. This can be true for Shula too, only less evident because she doesn't need to be replaced by a relative. Now, if this is the logic at play, we have to explain the presence of 2 new councillors without evident family links to the council, Sevika and the old lady. And we also have to explain why Mel Medarda, Professor Heimerdinger, Cassandra Kiraman, and Jay Stallis, who all have been councillors, are not replaced by a relative. There is one explanation that makes sense of all of this. When Salo talks with Ambessa in episode 3, season 2, he says that Caitlin has a lot of influence because the name of Kiraman bewitches people. And he mentions that Mel too has risen to power thanks to her name. Mel is not from Piltover, but apparently her origin coming from the royal family of Noxus gives her prestige. In season 1, we also learn that Mel is the richest person in Piltover, and yet the poorest member of the Medarda family. So she has a position of importance and influence in Piltover. But when she leaves Piltover, at the end of season 2, she has no relatives who can replace her in the council, so her seat is taken by somebody unrelated to her. Professor Heimerdinger was one of the founders of Piltover, so probably this is the reason he has the right to sit at the council. When the council is discussing the addition of a seat for Jace, Mel mentions that Heimerdinger has no reasonable, in their perspective, qualification to be in power. The only title he has is the one of scientist. So his participation to the council seems to be legitimized by his role as a founder, rather than a prestigious social position he and his family don't have. In the new council, there is no evident relative of Heimerdinger. The reason might be that he has no relative, or the founders don't pass their seat to the relatives, and in fact none of the other councillors was related to a founder, or the council expelled Heimerdinger from the council intentionally, and this apparently doesn't need a replacement. Similarly, Jace is not replaced by a relative in the new council, because he, too, had abdicated from his position in the council, leaving it. So in these cases, too, it seems that the remaining councillors did not feel the need to replace his empty seat. Moreover, Jace's addition to the council was quite an exception, for two reasons. One is that he becomes the 8th member of the council, and Shula protests that it counters their tradition of a council with 7 seats only. Moreover, he comes from a family that is not considered prestigious enough to participate to the council. In fact, Mel mentions that making Jace a councillor would require them to elevate his house, Talis, to a higher rank. It is not clear if, by making Jace a councillor, his house also automatically gains prestige, or if the councillors first have to raise the house rank in order to make one of its members eligible as a councillor. Whatever the link of causality, the two things go together. Councillors only come from prestigious houses. This could also explain the presence of the old lady in the new council, not related to any of the previous councillors and their houses. She was already seen in another scene before, at Kate's installation as a dictator. There are several people present at the event. Ambessa had asked Salo to gather all the families with a bit of power in a meeting at the council, and Salo did. So, other than Piltovian enforcers and Noxian soldiers, all the people present at that scene are considered to have influence and power in Piltover. In particular, there are some groups of people who are in the front lines and who are given more relevance by dedicated camera shots. We can recognize Shula's house, Salo's house, Torman Hoskel's house, at least one member of Bolbok's ethnic group, and these are the 4 houses that are represented in both the old and the new council. We can also see the old lady and her family. Probably they are a house with a level of prestige similar to the others. In fact, they can participate to the new council, but in the old one maybe they could not find a seat because of the presence of the richer Mel Medarda or of the founder Professor Eimendinger, who were considered more deserving than this house. But now that these two are absent, one seat was freed for the old lady's house. So we have explained the presence of 4 prestigious houses, a founder and a rich foreigner in the old council, and the participation of those same 4 houses, with the addition of a 5th one, in the new council. But we must still explain the presence of a Kiraman in the old council and her missing replacement in the new one, as well as the admission of Sevika in the new council. In fact, these two things go together. We have just shown that the participation to the council is granted to the most prestigious people in Piltover, as long as there are available seats for them. The houses seem to be ordered in a hierarchy of power, and the ones in the first places have the priority to sit at the council, until the 7 seats are assigned. And it is out of question that the Kiraman are a prestigious house, if not the most prestigious one in Piltover. This is not only confirmed by the fact that Cassandra Kiraman is a councillor, but also by how several people talk about their house throughout the series. In Season 1, Episode 1, Grayson highlights that the explosion caused by Wander's children is particularly severe because it damaged the Kiraman's property. In Episode 6, Marco complains that Caitlin doesn't follow his orders, despite being an enforcer of a lower grade, because as a Kiraman, she has the power of doing whatever she wants. In Episode 1 of Season 2, Maddie mentions that Caitlin is able to exert influence on the whole institution of the Enforcers by menacing of withdrawing her family's founding to them. And Maddie is not lying here because otherwise Step would notice it. Then Salo too complains with Ambessa that Princess Kiraman can do whatever she wants because of her family's importance. So, if the Kiraman are so important, why don't they have a seat at the new council? I think they do, actually. We know that they are important, so they deserve a seat at the council. And it probably should go to Caitlin. We don't know if she has other relatives who could take that role, but in episode 1 of season 2, she declares that she is the leader of House Kiraman, so she is the most important member of her family. I think that she inherits the lead of her mother, not because of matrilineage. Her mother was the previous leader of House Kiraman because she was a Kiraman, while her father Tobias entered the family by marrying a Kiraman, but without being one. So Caitlin is the descendant of a Kiraman who can inherit the lead. Since her mother was the house leader and also the family's counselor, she probably inherits her seat at the council too. And Kate is still alive at the end of season 2, so she doesn't need to be replaced by a counselor from another house. However, the Kiraman seat, which was next to Shula, is now occupied by Sevika. We know that councillors can vote on the addition or expulsion of other councillors, but I don't think it happened here. We see that other councillors are not happy of Sevika's presence, so for sure they did not vote out the most prestigious house of Piltover to give their seat to an unwelcomed houseless Zaunite. Caitlin probably gave up her seat spontaneously and destined it to a representative of Zaun. This is not the place to discuss how this is not enough to assure equality for Zaun, how this demonstrates Caitlin's serious intentions in reparations after her tyranny over Zaun, how this, however, is still not enough to excuse Caitlin's crimes against human rights, and many other issues. I have talked about many of these in other videos, so I'll skip all this here because here I'm only focusing on understanding how the Piltovian Council works and how it deals with power. We have now determined that Piltover is not a democracy but an oligarchy based on aristocracy. Councillors are not chosen by the population through vote, but they arbitrarily receive that position based on the family they are born in, and based on the competition with other families over who gets the more prestige and therefore priority to the council. The only people who can vote the membership of councillors are other councillors. We see this with the admission of Jace and the expulsion of Heimerdinger. In case of Sevika, I think that she cannot be expelled by vote, because her participation was imposed by a Kiraman. If the councillors could vote about her participation, they would not have admitted her into the council to begin with. So the other councillors are probably unhappy with her presence, but need to tolerate her because a Kiraman decided so. While this might be slightly reassuring to grant at least one narrow seat for all of Zaun to debate with 5 Piltovian representatives, it still paints a grim picture of the amount of illegal influence accorded to one single individual over the official institution of power. In this case, Caitlin is using her huge influence to do something good in favor of oppressed and unprivileged people. But if this is how the system works, it can offer dangerous openings to prestigious individuals with ill intentions too, at the expense of the community. I will now discuss how the community, the population of Piltover, experiences the power of the rulers and what kind of relation they have to it. The common people of Piltover are at the mercy of the powerful, prestigious houses. Jace's mother openly recognizes her own inferior status and her consequent lack of power and rights when trying to defend her son during his trial. She says that, coming from an inferior social rank, she knows that her voice is not important compared to the councillors. In his trial, still a young scientist, Jace is not given a lawyer to defend him. These are examples of how vulnerable common people are when they face the council or powerful houses. Caitlin, menacing to stop funding the enforcer in order to persuade the whole institution to bend to her will, means that potentially one person has the whole police at her command and can, if not force them, at least influence them to serve her own interest, not the interest of the population. This adds to the fact that the enforcers are given too much uncontested power. Basically, the enforcers are the tool of the council to enforce their decisions, to make happen the thing they decided must happen. Be it arrest somebody, check if the law is respected, question suspect criminals, guard prisoners, accompany convicted people to trials, and so on. The enforcers carry out the council's will, and they deal with whoever might oppose it. As said, the council is only composed by rich people, and the enforcers can be influenced by funding individuals, so basically enforcers are the more or less private guards of the rich. Enforcers behave extremely different in Zaun and in Piltover. In Zaun, everybody is scared of encounters with them because usually they hurt. We see several examples of police violence on Zonites. The very first scene of Arcane Season 1 is a massacre of Zonite workers by enforcers. In Episode 3, Vi is arrested and then imprisoned by an enforcer without any actual law infringement, nor accusation, nor trial, and this is mentioned by Kate in Episode 5. And while in prison, Vi suffers daily physical abuses without any consequence for the guards, who are still enforcers, perpetrating them. In Season 2, Episode 2 and 3, Caitlin and her strike team infringe several human rights while dealing with Zunites, without any consequence because they are enforcers. In Episode 4, Sevika and other Zanites are violently assaulted and arrested by enforcers and Noxians, simply for gathering and trying to organize their survival. Many of the people present at the meeting are put into prison without any official procedure. The enforcers can do whatever they want to Zunites without any consequence for them. On the contrary, in Piltover the enforcers seem very friendly. When Vi meets Maddie, she immediately thinks that she is going to be questioned or searched, because that is what usually happens when she meets enforcers in Zaun. Instead, Maddie only wants to greet her and have a chat. Even if Vi and her friend are clearly drinking and sleeping on the streets, which might be considered as a deviant behavior against the public decency, the enforcers in Piltover don't assault them. In fact, Piltover is filled with enforcers everywhere, but as far as we know, there is little police violence compared to Zaun. Piltovians seem to be used to enforcers. They are always present at big public events to police the order and safety of the city. In fact, order and safety seem to be fundamental for Piltover. The council, and especially Shula, mention several times the people's safety and need to feel safe as reasons to oppress Zonite further. In Episode 1, Season 1, Grayson asks Vander to give her the culprits of the explosion at Jay's laboratory so that Piltovians feel safe, and Vander answers that they never seem to care about the safety of Zonites. After Jinx's attack at the council, Shula says that the people are scared and suffering, but it's not clear how. The only victims of the attack seem to be the 3 dead councillors, while the population might be shocked by the attack, but not actually impacted by it. Is this a reason enough to invade Zaun? Similarly, Kate tries to pressure Vi into joining the enforcers by stating that people are calling for blood, meaning that Piltovians want revenge against Zonites because of the attack. It is not clear if Piltovians really want to avenge the rich oligarchs, or if Kate means that the most prestigious families, relatives of the dead councillors, want to punish Zaun. And even later, when the council is dissolved, because Caitlin has become a dictator, this logic still remains. Caitlin calls the colonization of Zaun peacekeeping operations. She behaves like the council did. The zeal of the council for the population's safety, that so readily pushes them to inflict several blows to Zaun, seems to disappear when it undermines their money. After Jinx stole some X-gems, Jace suggested to close the X-gates to grant the safety of the population. But the councillors refuse. Some of them argue that the closed X-gate would deprive many Piltovians of their income, without, however, suggesting to introduce any economic aid that would only consume a small fraction of their huge wealth. Other members openly lament that they would lose a lot of money and business opportunities if the X-gate closed. So, the safety of Piltover is so important that Zonites can be oppressed to reach it, but not so important to accept taking any temporary economic risks. It sounds like an excuse. It sounds a lot like a situation in which a rich elite owns everything and underpays the rest of the population while stripping the rest away, but in order to prevent rebellions, they blame everything on an even poorer and more fragile social category, encouraging discrimination against them and depicting them as a danger that the consequently heroic elite is protecting the population from. That is why enforcers behave so nicely towards the people they are supposed to protect, while they go so unhinged when they deal with discriminated Zaunites. Prejudices add to this, with Piltovians despising Zaunites and considering them naturally evil, dangerous, and threatening to their lifestyles. Piltovians don't have many rights, but they are probably okay being ruled as long as this keeps them safe from evil Zaunites. They give up many of their rights, and most of Zaunites' rights, in order to feel protected by a threat invented by the Protector, who only want to have more power and money. And when they call themselves City of Progress, they really believe they deserve this title. Before the last section, I am curious. Does this situation remind you of any real-life society? Let me know in the comments if you find any similarities with societies from any time or region. It surely reminds me of some aspects of my country. Originally, the idea for this video started when I saw some interpretations of Ambessa and her Noxians as the cause of the distortion of Piltover into a tyranny. Ambessa certainly plays a role in the further polarizing the political stance of powerful Piltovians and persuade them to install a dictatorship, and then she tries everything to manipulate Kate in order to gain more power and freely act accordingly to her own plans. However, Ambessa is not the agent who corrupts Piltover. Piltover was already spoiled before her arrival. Yes, Ambessa instigated further violence against Zaun, but a less blatant level of Piltovian violence was already a constant in Zaun's daily life. Yes, Ambessa pushes for the installation of a dictator, but before Caitlyn took that role, Piltover was already ruled by a very small elite, even smaller, reduced to 3 people after the attack of Jinx. The population had no say about Kate's installation as the absolute leader, but neither had they a say about the council members and their decisions. Ambessa can insert herself so comfortably into Piltover's political system because the system is already shaped to welcome such agents of domination. Piltovians let their oligarchy rule over them because they are nice to them and they are only mean against the Zaunites, so they don't feel threatened. But they should, because the council is nice to Piltovians for now. Caitlyn as a dictator is nice to Piltovians for now. But any leader can change their mind at any moment, and if the system gives her absolute powers, they become dangerous. Instead, if a more equal system is built, any leader is given only limited powers, diminishing the risk of them becoming a danger for the population. By giving full powers to the council first and then to Caitlyn, with the goal of oppressing Zaun, Piltovians are building and oiling a tool of domination that can target them too. Tyranny is not something new brought to Piltover by Ambessa and almost winning over Piltover in the final battle. Tyranny was a strong beast, generously nourished by Piltover itself, and asleep for a long time, and Ambessa's arrival only contributed to awaken it quicker than expected. Ambessa only does what Piltover's political system allows her to do. She simply uses the tool and the power that the council and then the dictator provide to her. Ambessa does not corrupt Piltover, she reveals its true face. This is what we can understand about Piltover's politics during the series. But at the end of Season 2, it is suggested that some changes could start. I have discussed the future of Piltover and Zaun's politics in this video, together with the last lines of Kate and Vi, because these topics are linked. What do you think about Piltover? Does it deserve the title of City of Progress? Would you like to live there as a common citizen? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and also give a look to my playlist of Arcane video essays. Bye!